All right, cool. All right, so I'm with my sister. So this is kind of an extension of that one the theme from my Christmas video where I talked about family. Family is a very important thing around the holidays, and so my sister's here to share with the world. Heidi, tell everybody hi. Introduce yourself. Tell us about a little bit about the things that you're interested in and that kind of thing.
Oh boy, when it comes to interest, I'm not sure where to start there. Okay, well, I'm Heidi. I'm 22 years old, and I'll be 23 in July. I'm currently going to apologize because my recent trip to the hospital last night, I'm currently on a combination of medicines, and I'm a little bit disoriented. So, if I'm a little bit loopy, I promise you, that's, as Dennis would say, this doesn't represent me.
Right. So, and that's fine. It's actually kind of like what even gave me the idea to even call you is because of your being sick and having your experiences at the hospital.
Mhm.
So, do
A couple of times you may see me lean out stage left, and that's actually to grab a thermometer and check my current fever.
okay,
So,
okay.
yeah.
This is an oral thermometer, right?
Yes. No, I wouldn't be using a rectal thermometer on camera.
Okay.
Couldn't pay
Uh,
me.
that's good. That's good. Obviously, we know where your limits are,
Yeah.
and sometimes it seems
Setting
like it
boundaries
all.
is important.
Huh?
I said setting boundaries is important.
Yeah, one should hope. All right. And just for the record, Lipton does not sponsor this video.
This is true. I'm just a fan.
Yep. All right. So I was asking you about your interests. You're something of a gamer.
I am.
So what are your favorite games?
If I was to go through a list, I'm actually a fan of the Dark Souls series. I'm a fan of Dead Space. Space 2 in particular would be my favorite. Mainly, I play a lot of RPGs, but there's certain games that I can't shake from my teen years. For instance, I have a love of Devil May Cry, as stupid as it may be at times.
That's
I
awesome.
Yeah, it's very very male oriented, but at the same time, very much fan service for the ladies.
Yeah. As I recall, we used to play a lot of video games when you were a kid. When I was still in Texas.
We did actually. You're where I got my start. I played Dark Cloud growing up in Kingdom Hearts because of you.
That's
Those are
actually really
the first
cool.
games that I beat.
Some of the best memories I have. Oh my god. 1 second. I need to tell her I can't talk. 1 second. I'm in the middle of an interview right now. I'm sorry. Do you want to go call Jill? Are you sure? All right. Are you sure it's not important? All right. I'll try to call you afterwards then. Okay. Oh no, you're fine. You're fine. All right. All right. Bye bye. Sorry, that was an employee of mine who I'm also close to as a friend. I feel bad for her.
No problem there.
She
This is a
she
candid interview.
she grew up Mormon, so she's suffering. Yeah.
Okay.
Anyway, at any rate, so yeah, some of my best memories with you were playing these games. Actually, it was the best bonding, and then I moved away, and I kind of abandoned y'all, and I'm sorry about that. But you know what? Sometimes you have to follow your own arrow. So, all right. So you're into games. What else?
I mainly study nowadays. I look into linguistics, and I'm also into psychology. My father is also our father. Sorry, our father has also
Who art
kind.
in California?
Uh, he's actually turned me more towards the subject of certain parts of history as well. And actually, I went to Barnes and Noble this afternoon. I was set loose by Chris, who said, "Go pick out all the books you want," and I got one on the Roman Empire, things like that. So I've been reading a lot more, and unfortunately, there's one book I was looking for that they didn't have, but this one was a fiction book that I was fond of by Duran that was based on Tolkien.
Oh, cool. That is cool.
So,
So you're keeping yourself educated even though you're not in school right now?
yes, I'm trying to go back to school next year.
Awesome. Well, just don't take any, or try to avoid taking any humanities courses.
Mainly, one of the things that I was discussing with Dad around Christmas was I want to look more into natural science.
Well, that's good. So then you're actually going to determine that there are 150 different genders, right? Because
Sorry for another.
that's yeah, yeah. But biology, according to science, there's no such thing as gender, or there's like all these infinite genders. That's kind of a little hill that I've been dying on online and on some of my videos here. All right, so I wanted to discuss with you specifically your experience in medicine as a patient, and then maybe from the other side as well. So, I'll let you lead on that one.
Well, I mean,
So, well, let's talk about your most recent experience.
all right. So, about the day before Christmas, I was working Christmas Eve, and I come home to find that I have what's referred to as a labial abscess. And it's not something that I've had issue with before in this specific variation. Before this, in January, I had a Bartholin cyst,
Mm.
which is on the Bartholin gland.
So, can you explain what that is for those who don't know?
Okay, so on either sides of the vagina proper, there are these Bartholin glands that actually play one of the key roles in, well, secretion of fluid when it comes to the body's natural cleaning and arousal, things like that.
Yeah.
And I was in the hospital for about a week over the Bartholin gland. And there's not really a lot of proper research done into Bartholin cysts. In fact, nobody knew what they were. I always try to study up on things to make sure that I know what I'm going into so I can discuss everything I need to explain.
Let me ask you a stupid question, but do you think that maybe the lack of investigation into this area is because it's maybe male doctors that seem to
Well,
dominate the field?
it was interesting. When I was discussing it with the doctors when I was actually admitted into the hospital, a couple of them actually shook their heads and said, I have no idea what that is. And I said, well, maybe it's because it's not your field, because it's more of a gynecology problem.
Mm-hmm.
But actually, one of the gynecologists I was speaking to about the issue in January, she told me the only reason she knew what it was is because she's actually dealt with them herself.
Mm.
So she said
So,
there's a lot of research when it comes to these things because this isn't an issue that everybody deals with. But she said a surprising statistic is about 30% of women will deal with something of that sort.
so you would think that if it's 30% of women are experiencing something like that, that there should be more research into that. So the question is, why aren't they training their doctors more on this kind of a thing?
Well, there's a
And
gray areas that a lot of doctors don't tend to look.
yeah, but you don't think that maybe it's because it's not interesting enough to men?
Well, it could be that. It also could be a lot of things go misdiagnosed. For instance, this was one of the funniest times when I went into the hospital on the 26th. I actually learned that some of the male doctors weren't aware of what the actual parts were. For instance, labial abscess, and he an area examined me. Well, a female nurse, and at first I was put into a medical screening room instead of an exam room. Without looking at where it was, he said, "All right, we're going to see if we can just get you antibiotics and see if we can get you out of here." And I said, "You don't want to examine it first?" And he said, "Well, with things like this, I'd have to call in a female nurse." And I said, "All right, well, I would prefer it
So you
because
want
I
to
want
take
to
the
know."
easy way out? Is that what you're telling me?
Yes.
Oh my
And
god.
I said, "No, I know my rights as a patient, and I believe that this is an emergency. And with a medical emergency, one of the things they are obligated to care for you. So they really had no right to turn down." So I had him examine it, and he said, "Well, if it's just a small cyst," and I said, "It is not. It's larger than golf ball sized." So he examined it, and he actually was getting the dimensions. He's like, "No, that's about 5 by 2 by 3 inches deep." He said, "That's actually a large abscess." And I said, "Yes." So they put me into an exam room finally in the ER. And So they were discussing it. They had teams running in and out who all wanted to examine. I hadn't met my doctor yet. And I had a great doctor who's a male doctor. And he actually did come in and say, look, I'm not as familiar with these things, but we have an OBGYN who's just down the hall. If you'd like to wait around, they were going to discharge you with antibiotics. But if you'd like to wait around and you don't mind staying a little bit longer, we want to get you looked at by a gynecologist. And I said, obstetrician gynecologist would be just as good. So I had no
Yeah.
problem with that. And she came in and she did an examination. She called one of her superiors in. And I was also, I want to actually point out there was a fourth year medical student who was attending with them because this is a university hospital. And she was excellent.
Mm.
She was actually brought in at one point into one of the labor and delivery areas, and she helped a woman who was in labor get almost to the point of Zen. She was talking me through what was happening. So they decided, the gynecologist, they had two consultation teams. And the gynecologist decided that it would be best to do a bedside lancing of, well, the abscess.
Mm-hmm.
And what that entails is first they have to inject with lidocaine, which I've told them before. I've had issues with lidocaine. It does not work on me. It actually creates more of a burning, and it actually burns past the point of injection. So
Oh,
I said, yeah, uh, I've had it injected before, and instead of numbing, it burns, but I still feel every bit of the sensation.
yeah.
So I said, I'm not sure if that's the route I want to go down, but they said, we're going to try it first. And they were right. The lidocaine actually did take an edge off of the actual pain. So I was
Yeah.
able to kind of muscle through it. But the medical student, she was very, very sweet. And she was talking me through the entire process, helping me steady my breathing. And I actually found out from the gynecologist one of the things she was working on when she was helping out with the labor of the one woman. She was in about a 70-hour labor. And
Oh,
this med
wow.
she requested the med student stay in there with her. And she didn't leave her side more than to go to the bathroom.
Oh, wow.
She sat there
That's
and I asked
going
her,
above and beyond.
she was fantastic. And I asked her, I'm like, you didn't have anywhere to go? And she said, no, I had plans, but when it comes to these things, one of the fields that I'm studying into is actually family medicine. And well, I can appreciate that.
So, I mean, they afforded her that kind of discretion too to stay because I mean, they didn't need to recall her for some other duty.
Well, she was
No.
actually just finishing what she was supposed to be doing that day.
Okay.
And she was supposed to go home, but the gynecologist, the entire team of them said they wanted to keep her. They said even though she's not currently practicing,
Rest.
she's just a student.
Yeah.
She said they already want her.
So she's going to get a residency there.
Oh yes, she is. She's by far one of the best, and I actually wrote a review about it on Facebook because this
Good.
was the first pleasant experience that I've had. But
Really? So
yes,
how many times have you been to that hospital?
I've been to that hospital a total of 4 times.
Okay. That's,
Uh, one of which was for gallbladder problems,
hmm.
and a lot of those things go overlooked as well.
Yeah, how did that one go, by the way?
With my gallbladder, so you're familiar with the quadrants in the body. There's the upper left hand side and the different sections. Well, with
Well, no, but I can roll with it.
okay, well, if you're describing the amount of pain you're in and what section it would be in, they're going to ask if it's going to be in the upper left quadrant or the lower left quadrant, which would be around the appendix area.
Yeah.
And I was coming in with pain. I was about 16 years old, and I had pain just right there. And that was in the hepatic area, which would be near liver, gallbladder.
Yeah, I would have thought that too.
Yeah. So at first they misdiagnosed it and said that it was liver issues. And I said, well, that wouldn't make sense. I used to drink in my youth occasionally, but I didn't think that it would have caused problems like that. And sure enough, I had gallstones.
Hmm. Well,
And yeah, which I was taking care of at home as well.
aw, sweet cat.
Artemis, oh, she's precious.
That's cute. So that's pretty young to have gallstones. So you usually don't get that until you're much, much older.
Unfortunately, in the South, it's not something that can be avoided. When
Well, Unless you're vegan.
Well, yes. I was actually vegan for 2 years, so I can agree to that.
Yeah.
Most of my health problems came from a lot of the grease and a lot of the fats in meat, so I can agree to that.
So, how did the doctors treat that? Like, did they know it was? They didn't know it was a gall problem right away, and so
So I was
what
actually
what
overnight.
what kind of treatments did they give you that were obviously wrong?
Well, we're looking into liver issues and trying to treat it. At one point, somebody bounced around the idea of cirrhosis, and I said, "Well, I'm
Hmm.
not showing any signs of cirrhosis, but that's an interesting concept because I've always studied the medical field. It's one of the things I was having fun with when I was
Well, did you have jaundice?
no.
Oh, well, I don't know why they thought you had cirrhosis.
Well, they were saying, well, because it's liver pain, and I said it would display as many different symptoms.
So, do these people hear uh, hoofbeats and then imagine zebras?
I
That's what it sounds like. Instead of looking for the horse, they go straight to the zebra. It sounds pretty
I think
stupid.
about it a lot like it's an episode of House where there's no way it's lupus. Is it lupus? It might be lupus. So it's one of
Yeah.
those things. Um, well, with that, I actually received it was I forgot what the actual one was, but it was something to help combat acid in the body, like for acid reflux.
Hmm.
They gave me that, which you can also buy it over the counter. But one of the things they prescribed was
This wasn't a PPI, was it? This wasn't a PPI, was it?
mm,
Okay, so this isn't something that reduces the amount of acids it's like proton pump inhibitor. It's not like that, right?
yeah.
Okay, because that I think that had a class action lawsuit in the last few years.
No, this was a medicine that you can actually buy over the counter as well,
Okay.
but it was a stronger version of it. So basically, are you familiar with how the gallbladder works?
It secretes bile. Is that right?
So the
I'm pretty
gall,
stupid.
the liver secretes bile into the gallbladder, and it kind of ebbs and flows.
Okay.
And when you have gallstones, they obstruct it, so it kind of swells and inflames.
So what does the gallbladder do specifically? If so, it collects the bile, and what does it
It,
just break down oils in that location,
yes, it breaks down fats and oils.
and then it secretes it where?
So that I'm actually not as well versed in. This
Okay.
is me going based on I tried to ask information from the hospital and they never gave me that much. But it's I know that I was having stomach issues from it as well.
Some of it goes into the stomach, right? Okay.
That's my mind went with that. But it was one of those things where I wasn't actually a long kind of issue that I had. I only had the issues for about a month. Mom, as much as I discredit her at times, she was looking into homeopathic cures.
So sugar pills.
Well, you would think that, but there's actually a lot of Eastern medicines as well that do work. Like, for instance, turmeric, I swear by it.
Well, turmeric, it does have some
Anti-inflammatory
use.
properties that.
Yeah, but it's not like a panacea. So I
Well,
don't.
so I was actually on a cocktail of different things from home because it's mom. So, for instance, I was drinking mixtures of water with lemon or water with apple cider vinegar. The next time I went in for a doctor's appointment, about a month or so later, my gallstones were gone. I was
So
also
just taking in more acid dissolves the oil in your gallbladder.
yeah, and actually, one of my favorite teas is dandelion root, which they warn you if you're having liver or gallbladder issues because it can help produce more uh, of the bile. They tell you to be careful and talk to your doctor before you drink it
Hmm.
because it's one of the digestive aids.
Interesting. Useful.
Yeah, I
Okay.
actually look into different kinds of tea. One of the things that I was drinking in this time period was ginger turmeric tea. And I actually drink that for any time there's any kind of inflammation. When I had my Bartholin cyst, it was doubling overnight, and it ended up baseball sized.
Oh wow.
It was a lot of
That you couldn't walk like that, could you?
yeah. I also couldn't sit down.
Ow.
So,
God help you if you're trying to sleep either.
oh yeah, no, the pain for that because of the fever and the infection spreading, you actually at times experience it almost like contractions and waves.
Oh
Mom
my
was
God.
in my sleep every 6 minutes or so. I was crying in my sleep.
I had that with tooth pain before, not with any other pain. I don't think I. Well,
It's
actually, no. That also did happen to me when I used the test kit, but that's a different story. Um, anyway, carry on.
well with nerve pain. You have to be very careful because there's actually a very it was something I posted recently with the connections that you have with the nerve endings that run through your teeth. Somebody said it's wild or it's a wild concept that some types of insurance consider it luxury bones. And they said it would be a wild concept if one day your insurance said, "Oh, all of your toes are broken. I'm sorry, you don't have extra toe insurance."
It does seem like the kind of thing they do, doesn't it? I honestly really wish we had the NHS, but then again, there's some things about the NHS I do not like. Like, for example, they do have very long waiting lists.
Yes.
But let's get back to your experiences. So,
With my most current experience, I'm actually dealing with it currently. As I said, this was the 26th, and it is now the 27th.
okay.
So overnight, I went home. They did not give me any antibiotics while I was there. They
Is
said
that
they would.
is that a good or a bad thing?
It was not the greatest because my body was fighting off an infection. And
Okay.
they were arguing amongst themselves for a few hours. They said, "Well, I feel hard swelling. I don't believe there's any signs of infection." And I said, "Well, there's actually, if you feel around here, there's actually uh, like a squishier area. It can drain." And they said,
Yeah.
"No, that's just irritation." And this is not my first experience with anything of the sort with that. Uh, I was actually told from the abscess prior that there was because it came back the second time with the
Yeah.
abscess. The first time that I had it, it was the same abscess that actually came back because they misdiagnosed me.
Yeah.
They told me instead of an abscess that it was just a harder cyst and there was no fluid. And they actually had it was through my catheter in my arm. They used iodine. They put me through a test, and they were checking to see my body if there were certain things like they were checking my blood, everything else.
Are we talking like the radioactive iodine?
So when they were doing the check on me, they said they could not find any signs of pus or any kind of infection. So there was no systematic infection. I said, "Well, that's great news." And they told me, "Yeah, you can breathe easy. Just rest up at home. Try to keep any irritation off of it." And I said, "That sounds great." And the next morning, it ruptured in my sleep.
Oh.
And I used the app because with this, you can use an app to talk with the ER nurses afterwards. With your withdrawal paper, you can actually type the messages.
Wow, that's actually very nifty.
However, I had no response, and after about an hour or so, my message disappeared. I wanted to screenshot it to prove that I had messaged the
Yeah.
nurse. However, due to HIPAA violations, you cannot screenshot these.
Really?
Yes, because there's a lot of health information. HIPAA
So
has to
how do
take.
you prove that you actually contacted them?
I had no proof, which I
Okay.
thought was a little bit jaded. So, anyway, I came back with the same cyst where it had swollen up to the size of a baseball the next time. This time, uh, I said to them, "Look, I want you to examine this. I do feel soft swelling. And this isn't my first rodeo through this hospital. I just want to make sure I'm taken care of properly."
Yeah.
And that's when the doctor came in. He told me, "I want you to be looked at by gynecologists as well." And sure enough, through an actual exam, they used a speculum. They checked everything just to make sure where the swelling ended. They did a fantastic job, the gynecology team did. And they determined, well, this is actually close enough to the surface that we can lance bedside. And I said, okay. And they had changed their mind a few times about the antibiotics, which was kind of discomforting to think about.
Yeah.
Because they ruled in that it was an infection, but it was not systematic this time either. But it was
Give
an
me one
issue.
second. Give me 1 second.
And we'll be right back. Oh, God, please cut this out when you edit this.
There's not one single interview that I have done that she has not interrupted with trying to come or
These
many
are
times.
special guests.
It's very, very annoying. She's definitely, but she's and she likes being. I know I've said that in all the other interviews. I've had to say that. I've had to excuse my. I'm done making excuses. Carry on.
All right. So in this case, they told me there was no systematic infection. I said, all right, so I don't have to worry about anything like any fever. In triage, they ran the thermometer across my forehead. And hold on, I have Inga crossing through in the background.
Tell Inga I said hi.
1 second. Inga, Jada says hi. She says hi. She's talking to Mom.
Tell her I love
Okay.
her. Tell her I love her.
Jadis loves you. She said I love her too. Okay. So, back to the initial topic. They said there was no systematic infection and that I should be good to go. I shouldn't be worrying about fevers. And you're familiar with the different types of thermometer, how they have some that can go under the arm, some across the forehead.
Yeah.
And generally, they run colder if they're external thermometers.
Yeah, of course I do. I mean, you're much better off going.
Take an account with.
Yeah, like well, a rectal thermometer is the best way to get a core temperature, but otherwise, under the armpit's probably the next best thing.
Well, with my basal body temperature, they said that I didn't have a fever and that I wasn't anything. They said, no, 98.6 is actually one of the best. Chris was overlooking and it said 98.9. Jesus H. Yes!
We'll edit this. We're gonna edit this out. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Yes. I'm in.
And she's in the middle of a freaking interview.
I understand that you bought one on the way home, but I don't know where your is. I am sorry. I'm telling you, there is no way that I 15 in an hour.
Like a child.
Hold on, she's also calling me a stupid bitch. Is there a way we can pause this interview because you're going to be able to edit it?
Go ahead. You kind of suck right now. You're ruining our interview, just so you know.
So, where was I going with that?
I don't know. I lost
I
track.
tend to forget, but I always remember. So, she's still. Oh, I know. Honey! The mic is very receptive.
It's true. Who was that?
That was Inga.
What did you say?
I'm so sorry, and she slammed the door.
Why are people doing this kind of stupid shit? This is actually a very useful interview.
Well, in this thing, they argue with me, and my opinions aren't supposed to be heard.
Your opinion is actually perfectly valid, and like I said before, this is something that it's a conversation I've had with a lot of people, although never recorded. And you're not alone. That's the important thing, is you're not alone in being gaslighted, and so that's definitely one of the things I want to talk about. But we'll get to that when you.
In this household, if I state an opinion, they generally walk out mid-sentence.
Yeah.
So it's one of those issues. So I was told I wouldn't have to worry about running a fever. My base body temperature when they ran the forehead one was 98.9. And I was like, okay, well, that's not so bad. They said it was 98.6 and that was the standard, but it was 98.9.
Yeah.
And Chris said it was reading a little bit higher beforehand as well because he was standing there watching over it.
Mm-hmm.
And they did another check on me later for my temperature, and it was 99.6. And at the same time, they didn't record that one on my documentation. They only recorded 98.9. So,
Interesting.
yeah, it was interesting. I mean, generally, if it's the external part of the body, I would want to record that just in case because I know that the internal basal temperature would be higher than that.
Yeah.
But anyway, not the issue. Part of the issue, but not the sole issue.
Yeah.
I get home and I have sort of a good night. Chris actually bought me soy milk so I could have soy milk and cookies.
That's
And
awesome.
he was a big help in comforting me through part of it. He gets annoyed at times, but in this case, he said, pick what you want to snack on because I don't want you to have to worry. Especially because I had today off. He's like, you're going to be bedridden, so I want you to have snacks to try to sustain yourself. Because he knows I wasn't able to get up and make anything.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm able to sit up now, luckily with painkillers. Uh, Around 1 in the morning, I was discharged from the hospital at 11:30. 1 in the morning, I started freezing. I had chills very badly. And the temperature of the house was 75 degrees. And
Mm.
I was laying in my bed and shaking. And Chris was playing on the Xbox. He was a few feet away from me, and he was saying, if you're cold, I'll turn on the heater. And I was like, it shouldn't be necessary, but okay. And uh, so I fall asleep for some time. Chris is still awake, of course, and I ask him at one point, please feel my head. I feel like I have a very, very high fever because I wake up about an hour or so later and I no longer have chills because I'm
Mm.
hiding under a comforter for most of it. But I no longer have chills and I'm no longer freezing, and instead I feel like I'm burning up.
Mm.
So I have everything outside of the blanket, and Chris's entire forearm was cold to the touch, so I'm leaving his forearm on my head. To which I said to him, hey, I think I'm running a very, very high fever. And he said, no, you're not. The heater's on. I'm overheating too. I said, but you're much colder than me. And he said, you don't have a fever. I said, all right. This is not the first time this has happened. He tends to doubt when I have fevers. And he said, well, you're always warm. So
Mm.
I, in turn, wake up mom. And I say, Mom, hey, Chris was supposed to be watching over me to make sure I'm all right, but I don't know if I can believe if I'm just warm or if it's the heater, what's going on. And mom feels me and said, my God, you're burning up. She said, you're over 100 degrees. She can generally tell with me. And
Yeah.
normally my body doesn't start going into panic mode until I'm about 102.
Mm.
So sure enough, I have a thermometer in mom's room and I was 101.6 according to the thermometer. So I was a little bit worried there.
Mm-hmm.
And I take ibuprofen to bring down my fever. And instead of giving me a phone number to the ER and able to contact the nurses, I call the hospital with the phone number provided, and they give me the administration like call. It's like the connection to different departments. You get the switchboard,
Mm-hmm.
and they have one 24-hour nurse who's on call.
Mm.
She picks up the phone. It's this Southern woman who generally seems like she'd be pretty sweet. And she said, I'm going to have to call you back. So I said, all right, here's my contact information. She calls me back and I told her about my fever and I said, this seems like it would be a complication due to the surgery I had earlier today. I said, I'm not sure if it's because infection is spreading. I'm not sure what's going on, but I would like to talk about this and explain what's going on. Because I know some people run higher temperatures based on certain things. I know anesthesia plays into that, but I wasn't under anesthetics.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, well, it sounds to me that you're just not hydrated. And I said, are you certain about that? And then she said, what all have you had to drink? And I said, well, in the manner of 3 hours because I'm overheating and burning. Uh, what I've been doing is I had 2 bottles of Gatorade that were 30 ounces
Oh
and
wow.
Yeah, and a 16.9 fluid ounce bottle of water.
Wow.
Because I was very badly dehydrated. I wasn't on IV fluids while I was at the hospital, but I was put under NPO, which is nil per os, which means nothing by mouth.
Yeah.
This is also not the first time that's happened. Where my Bartolin trip, I asked them if there's any way they could put me on IV fluids because I'd been there 12 hours on NPO.
Yeah.
And I was running very dehydrated. So in this case, I didn't get IV fluids. I wasn't given any water or anything to drink. And they were doing that just in case I had to go to surgery because if you ingest anything by mouth, even certain medicines by mouth, there's a chance you can aspirate during surgery.
Mm.
So it's one of those issues. Well, I start hydrating like a madman when I get home. And normally I can't force myself to get out of the covers to drink anything, but at this point I'm telling myself, all right, I know I have a fever, and I know that for my best efforts, I have to stay hydrated. Because if I have a fever, that's one of the things, especially I was having joint aches. It was a mess. It felt like I had the flu. Like I was under the weather and the lethargy was so bad that I wasn't able to move, but I forced myself to drink my Gatorade and my water.
Yeah.
And she said, no, you still sound dehydrated to me. I said, all right. I said, is there any way this could have been a complication from a surgery? And she said, no, I don't believe so. So I said, all right. And she said, what else have you done? I said, well, I took ibuprofen to try to bring down my fever. And she said, what about your antibiotics? And I said, I wasn't given any. And my prescription that I was given to me at 11:30 at night. So all of the pharmacies near here were closed. Walgreens itself is open, but the pharmacy closed.
You don't have a 24-hour pharmacy on the island?
No,
Oh my god.
pharmacies themselves closed.
That is crazy. There should at least be one 24-hour pharmacy.
And it was one of those situations where we had just driven back from Dallas the night before. We drove there and back, and we were both exhausted, so we could not feasibly make another trip.
Wow.
We needed to rest.
Yeah.
So, one of the issues that I had was the fever. And I checked my temperature around Christmas as well, and it was also running 102. So that's the constant one. That's around the temperature that I've been. Intermission.